Imagine witnessing one of the most shocking, wildly unexpected viral moments in the entire history of global television, only to completely lose track of the incredible artist once the glowing stage lights finally went dark. When a painfully shy, heavily trembling 13-year-old girl walked onto the massive stage of a reality television competition, the entire world collectively held its breath, completely unaware that they were about to witness a massive vocal hurricane. That unforgettable audition completely shattered the internet, cementing her image as the ultimate, deeply innocent child prodigy. But what happens when the massive corporate cameras stop rolling and the viral sensation is finally forced to grow up? The incredibly dramatic truth that the mainstream media completely failed to cover is that the timid, highly nervous schoolgirl you remember no longer exists. She has completely and permanently mutated into a fiercely independent, highly original creative force, executing a massive, unprecedented artistic rebellion against the very television machine that made her famous. This is the incredibly guarded, deeply profound, untold story of a massive psychological and musical evolution. Here is exactly why Courtney Hadwin has changed infinitely more than you could ever possibly think. When the world was first formally introduced to Courtney Hadwin during her incredibly viral television debut, the overarching narrative was instantly and aggressively cemented into the minds of millions. She was heavily portrayed as the ultimate, painfully timid schoolgirl, a deeply nervous 13-year-old who could barely manage to speak a single coherent sentence to the imposing panel of celebrity judges. The massive contrast between her incredibly quiet, trembling speaking voice and the absolute, explosive rock and roll hurricane that violently erupted from her body, the absolute second the music started, was the exact magic formula that made her a global phenomenon. However, the incredibly dramatic truth that most casual viewers entirely fail to realize today is that the deeply insecure, fiercely trembling child who first walked onto that massive stage essentially no longer exists. As the years have rapidly progressed, she has undergone a massive, unprecedented psychological evolution, completely shedding the heavy, suffocating skin of that terrified young girl. She has meticulously cultivated a profound level of absolute, unshakable confidence that is incredibly evident in every single live performance and public interview she conducts today. The quiet, paralyzing fear that once deeply defined her initial public persona has been completely eradicated, entirely replaced by the fierce, commanding presence of a fully realized musical powerhouse who is absolutely unafraid to fiercely claim her rightful space in the notoriously ruthless entertainment industry. In the immediate, highly chaotic aftermath of her initial viral explosion, the mainstream media and the global viewing audience instantly rushed to place a highly restrictive, incredibly heavy label directly onto her young shoulders. She was aggressively branded as the modern reincarnation of Janis Joplin, an incredibly flattering but ultimately deeply dangerous comparison for a developing young artist. While the massive vocal similarities and the completely uninhibited, frantic stage presence initially propelled her to unprecedented heights of global television fame, that specific comparison rapidly threatened to become a highly suffocating artistic prison. The massive entertainment machine desperately wanted to permanently freeze her in that exact specific moment, aggressively pushing her to essentially become a highly lucrative novelty act or a glorified tribute singer. But Courtney possessed a massive, fiercely independent artistic vision that completely refused to be permanently boxed into a single historical reference. She realized with absolute, terrifying clarity that relying entirely on the nostalgic magic of classic rock covers would ultimately destroy her long-term potential. She bravely embarked on a highly difficult, fiercely intentional journey to completely break free from the massive shadow of her legendary idols, desperately fighting to actively prove to the world that she was not just a fleeting vocal mimic, but a truly unique, highly original creative force with her own distinct, entirely unrepeatable story to tell the waiting universe. The traditional reality television ecosystem is notoriously brutal and incredibly predatory, specifically designed to aggressively consume young, highly talented children, exploit their raw vulnerability for massive television ratings, and then completely discard them the absolute second the next viral sensation walks through the door. For a young, highly impressionable teenager suddenly thrust into the blinding spotlight of massive global fame, the overwhelming pressure to constantly recreate that initial viral magic is an incredibly toxic, deeply paralyzing trap. Many young artists completely lose their minds or completely destroy their vocal cords, desperately trying to constantly feed the insatiable appetite of the massive corporate entertainment machine. But Courtney brilliantly recognized the extreme danger of this heavily manufactured environment. She inherently understood that remaining permanently tethered to the reality television circuit would eventually completely drain her of her raw, artistic authenticity. Instead of desperately clinging to the fleeting, highly superficial validation of the television cameras and the celebrity judges, she made the incredibly brave, highly strategic decision to quietly step back from the blinding glare of the mainstream spotlight. She actively chose to protect her fragile mental health and her rapidly developing vocal instrument, entirely prioritizing her long-term artistic survival over the temporary, glittering illusion of overnight television superstar. This massive display of profound professional maturity is incredibly rare in the modern entertainment industry, firmly establishing her as a true anomaly. Following her highly publicized appearances on both the original talent competition and the subsequent highly competitive Champions spin-off, the traditional, heavily expected career trajectory dictated that she should constantly remain on television, desperately chasing whatever fleeting mainstream exposure she could possibly secure. However, demonstrating a massive, unprecedented level of strategic brilliance, she completely flipped the script on the entire corporate entertainment establishment. She actively stopped playing the exhausting, highly manipulative game of reality television completely. She fundamentally realized that constantly begging for the fickle approval of television executives was a complete artistic dead end. Instead, she boldly shifted her entire professional focus away from the highly restrictive confines of traditional broadcast media, deliberately choosing to invest her massive energy entirely into the modern, completely unfiltered digital landscape. By intentionally decreasing her mainstream television exposure, she completely took back the absolute power over her own narrative. She was no longer a highly edited, heavily sanitized character trapped in a network television narrative. She was a fiercely independent creator communicating directly with the entire globe. This massive, highly calculated pivot was not a sign of a fading career, but rather a brilliant, highly aggressive masterstroke of long-term career preservation. The absolute, undeniable hallmark of a truly legendary musician is the vital, uncompromising transition from merely performing the brilliant work of others to successfully creating entirely original masterpieces. For Courtney, making this massive, incredibly terrifying leap was the absolute most critical phase of her entire artistic evolution. It is incredibly easy to simply hide behind the proven, universally loved melodies of classic rock legends, but it requires a massive, unimaginable level of sheer vulnerability to expose your own raw, untested lyrics to a highly critical global audience. She bravely stepped entirely out of her comfortable, highly celebrated comfort zone and began fiercely pouring her own authentic teenage experiences, her deepest internal struggles, and her incredibly complex emotions directly into her own original songwriting. This massive shift from being a highly entertaining cover artist to a deeply profound, fully realized singer-songwriter completely revolutionized her entire professional trajectory. When she finally began releasing her own original music, she was no longer just aggressively screaming the historical pain of past generations. She was powerfully, undeniably projecting her own unique voice into the modern atmosphere. She successfully proved that she possessed the brilliant, highly complex creative machinery required to construct completely new sonic universes from the ground up. This monumental leap solidified her absolute status as a true, permanent fixture in the modern music industry, leaving the Novelty Act label completely in the dust. As she aggressively dived deeper into the highly complex process of writing her own original music, her entire sonic identity underwent a massive, deeply profound maturation. The incredibly frantic, highly explosive, and wildly uninhibited vocal style that initially defined her massive viral audition began to naturally evolve into something infinitely more controlled, deeply nuanced, and highly sophisticated. She did not completely abandon the raw, gritty rock and roll edge that originally made her famous, but she brilliantly began to masterfully weave in a diverse array of incredibly rich, completely unexpected musical influences. She actively began exploring completely different genres, carefully blending the absolute best elements of soul, modern alternative rock, and deep, emotional blues into a highly distinctive, entirely fresh sonic tapestry. She actively refused to allow the music industry to permanently categorize her or restrict her immense vocal capabilities to a single, highly predictable genre. Her absolute willingness to bravely experiment with completely different sounds, deeply complex vocal arrangements, and entirely new rhythmic structures showcases a massive, deeply profound artistic maturity that completely belies her incredibly young age. She is fiercely determined to construct a legacy that is completely immune to the fleeting, highly unpredictable trends of the modern mainstream music industry. By completely tearing down the invisible walls of musical genres, she has successfully transformed into a fiercely unpredictable, highly dynamic creative powerhouse. The incredible, deeply profound evolution of Courtney Hadwin is not merely restricted to the complex sonic landscapes of her original music. It is also highly, visibly evident in her massive, incredibly dramatic physical and stylistic transformation. When the global public first fell entirely in love with her, she was deeply frozen in the collective memory as a highly awkward, deeply nervous young teenager wearing incredibly simple, unassuming clothing. But as she has rapidly grown into a young, fully realized adult woman, her entire external aesthetic has completely morphed to perfectly reflect her fiercely independent internal artistic identity. She has entirely shed the highly sanitized, carefully packaged image of the innocent child star, boldly embracing a deeply edgy, highly sophisticated, and fiercely individualistic fashion sense that perfectly complements the raw, unapologetic nature of her maturing rock and roll sound. This massive visual transformation is not just a superficial change of wardrobe. It is a profound, highly intentional statement of absolute personal autonomy. She is aggressively signaling to the entire entertainment industry and her massive global fan base that she is no longer a highly controllable, easily manipulated child. She is a fully grown, fiercely independent creative force who completely dictates her own unique visual narrative. Her bold stylistic choices serve as a massive visual warning that she will absolutely never be forced back into the tiny, restrictive box she originally emerged from. By completely walking away from the highly toxic, fiercely manipulative grasp of the traditional mainstream television industry, she was entirely forced to construct her own massive platform entirely from scratch. She brilliantly recognized the absolute, undeniable power of the modern digital landscape and aggressively utilized massive social media platforms to cultivate a highly intimate, completely unfiltered relationship with her deeply dedicated global audience. Without massive corporate television executives constantly dictating her every single artistic move or heavily sanitizing her public image, she completely transformed her independent status into a highly lucrative, entirely self-sustaining digital empire. She began actively sharing the raw, highly unpolished, behind-the-scenes reality of her complex songwriting process, granting her millions of followers unprecedented, highly intimate access to her evolving creative genius. This fierce dedication to absolute, unfiltered digital transparency has created an incredibly loyal, fiercely protective community of fans who feel deeply connected to her as a real, authentic human being, rather than just a heavily manufactured television character. She essentially cut out the highly predatory traditional media middlemen entirely, proving that a true artist can absolutely dominate the global conversation entirely on their own terms. This brilliant digital strategy has completely revolutionized her career, firmly securing her absolute financial and artistic freedom for decades to come. One of the most incredibly difficult, massive challenges for any viral child star is the nearly impossible task of convincing the global public to actually let them grow up. Audiences are notoriously highly resistant to change, often desperately demanding that the artist permanently remain the exact same cute, highly entertaining novelty act they originally discovered. But the absolute brilliance of Courtney's journey is that she has successfully managed to completely evolve alongside her massive global fanbase. The millions of people who initially tuned in to simply watch a shocking, viral talent show moment have actually stayed to actively witness the breathtaking maturation of a truly serious, highly dedicated young musician. Her deeply loyal audience is no longer just passively watching her out of mere nostalgic curiosity. They are actively, fiercely supporting her entirely new original era. As her deeply complex original lyrics tackle highly mature, profoundly emotional themes, her fans are finding themselves completely growing up right alongside her, deeply relating to the evolving struggles and the massive triumphs she completely lays bare in her new music. This incredible, highly organic transition from a fleeting viral audience to a deeply dedicated, highly invested permanent fanbase is the absolute ultimate victory for any independent recording artist. She has successfully transformed casual television viewers into a massive, unstoppable army of absolute die-hard music purists who will fiercely defend her artistic journey. When we look back at the massive, incredibly complex trajectory of her career, it becomes absolutely, undeniably clear that Courtney Hadwin has achieved something completely impossible in the modern entertainment industry. She completely survived the highly toxic, deeply predatory meat grinder of the reality television machine, a ruthless corporate system that has completely destroyed countless other highly talented young children. She took the massive, incredibly volatile spark of overnight viral fame and brilliantly, meticulously fanned it into a sustainable, highly controlled and fiercely independent artistic fire. Her incredible journey from a deeply terrified, painfully shy 13-year-old schoolgirl to a fully realized, fiercely confident, and completely autonomous singer-songwriter is a massive, completely undeniable testament to her absolute, unshakable resilience. She successfully proved that you do not actually have to permanently sell your soul to the heavily manufactured corporate music industry to achieve lasting global relevance. She aggressively rewrote the entire rulebook, completely demanding that the entire world accept her not for the viral moment she was in the past, but for the brilliant, highly original powerhouse she is today. Courtney Hadwin has absolutely changed infinitely more than you think. She has entirely revolutionized her own destiny. By fiercely protecting her absolute authenticity, she has firmly secured her legacy, forever cementing her ultimate status as the most triumphant underdog in modern rock history.